Cannabis, pot, reefer, bud, weed, marijuana. 97 million Americans have tried it. Maybe you have too. Over 750,000 Americans were arrested for marijuana-related offenses last year, almost 90% for simple possession, breaking families apart and sending otherwise law-abiding citizens to already overcrowded courts and jails. The war on drugs is really a war on good Americans who smoke pot. The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, is the largest and most successful organization seeking to bring an end to marijuana prohibition, allowing essential medicine to reach patients and for regular Americans to enjoy a greater level of freedom. Join NORML to end marijuana prohibition. Just visit NORML.org, that's NORML.org, or call toll-free 888-67-NORML. That's 888-67-NORML. Produced and distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Daily Audio Stash is where responsible marijuana smokers listen in on the latest news about cannabis, hear the voices of the marijuana law reform movement in special segments and interviews, and kick back with comedy and music no other podcast can offer. It's NORML's Daily Audio Stash. More information at normalaudiostash.com. First up today, it's news from NORML. Our news today. San Diego supervisors meeting today to consider appeal. The San Diego County Board of Supervisors are meeting behind closed doors today to consider an appeal of the recent California Superior Court ruling. Last week, Judge William Nevitt finalized his ruling rejecting the county's challenge to California's Proposition 215 medical marijuana law. At the heart of the lawsuit was San Diego County's refusal to issue medical marijuana ID cards. This process became law when California adopted the SB 420 guidelines. San Diego was joined in the lawsuit by Merced and San Bernardino counties. None of the counties have indicated yet that they will appeal. We'll now go to an interview the Audio Stash conducted with a high-profile San Diego activist and medical marijuana patient. Rudy Reyes is a medical marijuana patient and activist in San Diego, California. We've interviewed Rudy here on the Audio Stash a number of times to discuss the situation in San Diego County. Rudy was in the courtroom last week to witness the arguments between the San Diego County supervisors and the state of California. Rudy, welcome back to the Audio Stash today.
Thank you. How are you today?
Doing very well today, Rudy. Thank you. You were in the courtroom last week. How did it feel to have the California State Attorney General representing medical marijuana patients?
It was. We were waiting and hoping that would happen. It was a thing of California law was being threatened by the county, and that was the person to step up for us. It's his law, if you can look at it like that. I mean, he was defending something he helped establish.
And Rudy, how did you and the patients feel about the proceedings overall?
It was, okay, the whole thing was, at first everybody started off scared because the judge was going to do what a judge does. It gives a fair, just ruling on what happened or what the decision is to be made. It turned out to be really good, and to our point, he listened to both sides, and he came out with the simple fact that Prop 215 was self-sustaining. In other words, there was no way a local government could pull it apart.
You've had a lot of face-to-face interaction with the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. How do you think they're going to react to this ruling?
Well, Diane Jacobs herself pretty much told me that she didn't see cannabis as a medical use, period, and she was against me from the get-go. I mean, when I had my sit-down conversation with her, that's what it came out to be. Now they've been told that they have to defend our rights. So they don't know what they're going to do. I know on the 5th of December, they're having another meeting, closed agenda meeting, where they're going to decide whether or not they're going to continue to pursue this case. I'm going to be there personally and tell them, hey, we don't want them wasting more money on this.
Rudy, this case came about over the county-issued ID cards. How could that come into place now in San Diego?
Okay, the way I've seen it done so far, like when Riverside did have a card for about 2 months, whatever it was that they were allowing that, they did it through the county where they allowed for the patients basically go and fill out a registration form with the county, and then they were, given a card, right? They made, I want to say, $110, $120 per patient, and it was really good revenue for the county. I've seen it also privatized in L.A., where, like, for example, they have MCBIP, which is a Medical Cannabis Buyers Identification Program, and that comes out to about the same, but the patients prefer it just because of the fact that it's in private hands and there's no way they can come after each patient that way.
Rudy Reyes is a medical marijuana patient and activist in San Diego, California. Rudy was in the courtroom last week to witness the arguments between San Diego's supervisors and the state of California. You can find more about Rudy at saverudy.org. Welcome back to the Audio Stash. Today, I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment to join us at NORML to end marijuana prohibition in America. Just visit NORML.org. Thanks to everyone who sent in a donation via PayPal to NORML's Daily Audio Stash through NORML yesterday. We need your help. Take a moment today to click on that PayPal button and send $1 or $5 to help us deal out our bandwidth. NORML's Daily Audio Stash has become so popular, we've had to upgrade the NORML audio servers to make sure you're getting the shows high speed and everyone can get them. So thanks everyone for listening on your cell phones, computers, and iPods, and visit normalaudiostash.com to make sure the program keeps coming at you high speed everywhere across the country. We have an important interview today with Dr. Duncan Clark, co-author of a new study out from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center that we highlighted in the program last week. Also today, we'll hear from Slate.com's Ryan Grimm in his opening of the Students for Sensible Drug Policy panel that included Clarence Page and Bill Press. First today, let's get to our interview with Dr. Duncan Clark of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. Last week here on the Audio Stash, we highlighted a new study from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center that indicated teens who use marijuana are not more likely to move on to harder drugs. Joining us on the program today is one of the co-authors of the study, Dr. Duncan Clark. Doctor, welcome to NORML's Podcasting Today.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much again for joining us here today, Duncan. The study is entitled in part, Examination of the Gateway Hypothesis. You followed a group of boys for 12 years. First, tell us where the study group came from and how did you get the participants involved?
The study started in 1989, and since that time we've been recruiting two groups of boys in the age 10 to 12 period, boys whose fathers have drug problems and boys whose fathers don't have drug problems, to kind of get a broad range of risk for substance use and substance use disorders. Over the years, we've collected a substantial sample. This particular study focuses on subgroups that we have some longer-term outcome information on.
Doctor, the environmental and neighborhood factors are mentioned a number of times in the study. Where did the boys come from?
Well, we're in the Pittsburgh area, and the boys basically came from neighborhoods around Pittsburgh, but we have information about neighborhoods, and that's one of the factors that predicted some of the substance use characteristics that we observed in the study.
And in looking specifically at the gateway hypothesis, did you see a progression from alcohol or tobacco onto other substances?
Well, in this study, we looked at, first of all, the extent to which the sequence that's described in the gateway hypothesis was present in these boys. The notion, of course, is that legal drugs, or generally legal drugs like tobacco and alcohol, are used first, with then marijuana use following later in the sequence. And for boys who had used marijuana, we found that over 20% had used marijuana first in the sequence of use. So, and in general, I think that the use of alcohol is also illegal in adolescence. So I think there's perhaps less of a focus among adolescents on difference in kind of social approval or acceptability of marijuana and alcohol. The other issue we looked at was whether or not the sequence, that is, illicit or legal drugs followed by marijuana, or the sequence in the other direction, marijuana followed by use of alcohol and tobacco, had some predictive value. And basically we found that that sequence didn't predict whether or not adolescents develop problems with these substances.
And doctor, outside of the gateway hypothesis, what did you see as possible predictors for a teenager developing a substance abuse problem?
We find that a tendency to delinquent behavior, what sometimes people call conduct disorder in childhood, predicts use of a variety of substances and also the development of problems, including cigarette smoking, alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs. And we think that this psychological characteristic is quite important in understanding why people develop drug problems. Whether or not people use marijuana and how that influences later drug use, in our study has been suggested to be less important than the individual's psychological characteristics. Another finding in this study was that using marijuana before other drugs was influenced by neighborhood characteristics, and we think that might be related to drug availability in particular neighborhoods. Oftentimes adolescents get alcohol from a variety of sources, their own homes, older friends or relatives. I think that in many situations, both marijuana and alcohol are fairly available, but nevertheless, availability does have an influence on which drugs are used first.
Duncan, something that really struck me in the study, it's mentioned that kids who have difficult personalities often have their parents disengage from them during teenage years because their behavior becomes so difficult. And that disengagement on the part of the parents can really lead to problems later.
Well, that's true. We find that irritability, difficulties with attention, and conduct problems tend to go together, and also that parental supervision during the teenage years has an influence on drug and alcohol taking opportunities, as I'm sure we can all imagine. And so children with difficult temperament, children with these other characteristics are tougher to parent than sort of your average or easy child. And so that sometimes combines with parents who are struggling themselves to lead to a situation where teenagers are not well supervised and have more opportunities to take drugs and alcohol.
So in recruiting this study group of boys whose fathers had a diagnosed substance abuse problem, is there a greater risk for these boys because of a genetic factor as well as their environment?
I think all these influences apply. There is clearly a genetic factor, and one of the areas we're interested in learning about in the study is just what exactly is transmitted or inherited by the child. And we think that the characteristic might be a difficulty in regulating behavior in general that's evident in childhood through some of these problems with attention and irritability. But there are clearly other influences. A parent who's continuing to have drug and alcohol problems has more difficulty providing adequate parenting. And so it's both the kind of genetic inheritance and also the parent's current situation that influences the child. So, I think that it's important to kind of think of the genetic component as entirely dependent in a lot of ways on the expression of the genetic risk as dependent on the environmental situation.
Dr. Clark, if there was some real-world merit to the gateway hypothesis, would we have seen the boys move through that hypothetical progression during the course of this 12-year study?
There are some elements to the gateway hypothesis that are not tested in this particular study, but the one observation that I think is important that does speak to the issue has to do with the fact that oftentimes alcohol and marijuana are used in combination. The progression from experimental use to regular use to problems with alcohol and marijuana tend to occur together in many adolescents. So, I think that the sequencing has been kind of overstated in some ways. We find that alcohol and marijuana use tend to go hand in hand in teenagers. The other issue that's really not so much addressed by this particular paper has to do with the development of other drug problems and problems with opiates, for example, heroin or cocaine, other kinds of drugs. And we need to get more information about later follow-ups in order to really definitively address, at least for this sample, the extent to which marijuana has an influence on these other outcomes. But I can say at this point that childhood characteristics that occur before significant drug and alcohol use are powerful predictors of adulthood use and problems with opiates and cocaine. So, we're not totally convinced. I wouldn't say that marijuana use doesn't have some influence, but I suspect that marijuana use has less of an influence than other personality and environmental characteristics.
Dr. Duncan Clark of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, thanks again very much for taking time to join us here today.
Thank you.
Dr. Clark is co-author of the new study, Predictors of Marijuana Use in Adolescents, Before and After Illicit Drug Use, Examination of the Gateway Hypothesis, which appears in the December issue of the American Journal of Psychiatry. We have links to it at normalaudio-stash.com. Next up today, we'll hear from journalist Ryan Grimm. Ryan's a writer at Slate.com, and he opened the panel with Bill Press and Clarence Page at the Students for Sensible Drug Policy Conference on November 18, 2006.
About 5 years ago, I noticed that I couldn't find any LSD anywhere. And out of an intellectual curiosity, I started asking other friends if they had ever seen it anywhere in the last couple of years. They noticed that they hadn't either seen it. And about 5 of us or so kind of made it sort of a passive activity to wherever we went to ask, have you seen any LSD anywhere? About 2 years later, I was in graduate school and was allowed to take a class outside of my public policy program. I took a journalism class. The professor asked us to write what are called trend stories. My first thought was, a lot of people are playing poker. I'll go write about poker. And I thought, why would I want to write about poker? I thought, well, here's a trend. I can't find any LSD. So I went to I had a professor at the University of Maryland School of Public Affairs, Peter Reuter, who's one of the top experts in the country on drug policy. I presented him my theory that there was no acid left, and he said, "Well, what data do you have? What do you have to back that up?" And I said, "Well, I can't find it." And he said, "Son, I'm sorry about that, but that's not how we do things in this field. We base our conclusions on survey data, on emergency room reports, on things that you can notice, detect." He said, "Look, hand me that. It was the Monitoring the Future. It's an annual survey of high school students." He ran his finger across the LSD number and said, "As you'll see here, there's been a steady amount of LSD," and then he got to the year 2003 and it had plummeted. It's like, he said, "That's strange, but it's a deviation." And he explained to me the way that the cycles of drugs go. When when a drug is in low supply, that means that price goes up. Producers have more of an incentive to bring it to the market, and it makes a rebound. Eventually, it might get priced out, come back down, it goes up and down. I said, that's how these things work. And I said, I don't know. It's been 3 years. You know, producers have had a chance to notice that it's gone. He said, okay, the 2004 numbers should be out either now or they're coming out in the next week or so. And if it stays the same, then you've got something here. He showed me where to find the 2004 numbers. They had just come out. I found them online, and it had plummeted another 50%. And when I brought that back to him, his jaw dropped. And he's like, this isn't a trend. This is an event. This has never happened in the history of drug policy. We've never seen a disappearance like this, a sustained disappearance like this. So wrote the story for my class, and the professor said, you know, this is actually something that you should publish somewhere. This is something serious. And so eventually it was suggested that I send it to Slate magazine, and I sent it to their drug policy editor, sort of there, named Jack Schaefer. I hadn't heard of him at the time, but he's a long time. He got his start doing drug reporting. Was then editor of the Washington City paper, San Francisco Weekly. Has been with Slate for, I think it's since its inception. He read the story and he wrote back. He said, "Thanks for this. I'm rejecting this, and I'm going to tell you why. I don't want you to take my reasoning why as a reason to rewrite it. I'm rejecting it outright." And then he explained that reporters have a tendency to look around themselves and notice that something has changed. Their neighbor bought a Prius. And then they write a story that says, you know what, more and more people are buying Priuses. And you'll often see a lead where, you know, Jane Thomas bought a Prius. And then the next paragraph it'll say, Jane is not alone. And that's how you know. That's how you know you're reading a bad article. If you look for that, you'll see it over and over and over again. And then you'll often notice that it's not followed by any facts. So I wrote back to Jack Schaefer, and I said, I agree with you that, you know, this is a mistake that a lot of journalists write, but I really don't think that there's any LSD out there. And I said, if you say you used to be a drug reporter, ask your old sources, and if they found any LSD. And he wrote back the next day and said, you know, can you come down to my office? See, apparently he had called some ex-sources of his out in San Francisco and they were in the hate. And one of them was he was a blotter artist, and that he would make blotter paper, and then he would sell it to museums and, you know, undipped to museums or to art galleries, etc. He's been tried a couple times by the federal government, but they haven't been able to put him in prison yet. And he said, yeah, there's no LSD. So they published this story, and to my happiness, nobody wrote to say, and sort of sadness, nobody wrote to say that I was wrong. And the article was read, it went all over the internet, and I got hundreds of emails. Nobody saying that it was wrong, which was interesting because it's hard to prove a negative, because all you have to do is find one dose of LSD, and there you go. You're wrong. So I tell this story because that incident sent me from where I was headed towards career in policy into a career in journalism. Not the normal way to get started. And because there has been such a vacuum of drug policy coverage in the media, it opened a way for me to move up quickly in the drug policy world. I mean, in the media, even in the mainstream media. And I tell it because I feel like I get a sense from a lot of reporters that they have a fear of doing serious reporting about drugs and drug policy because they're afraid that they won't be taken seriously. And perhaps I'm an anomaly, and they're right. or maybe they're wrong.
That was journalist Ryan Grimm at the Students for Sensible Drug Policy Conference. Coming up for you here next today from the Hempilation 1 and 2 album. Boy, we have some great music for you today. Hempilation, an album that was produced by High Times Magazine. First, we'll hear from Spearhead with this track, The Joker.
God bless everybody out there that is full of them criminal style. This one's about jumping out of the airplane. End zone like my man Don Shula. You my four-leaf clover, even bending over. I love you like Rover, you my little lawnmower. But lower, lower, see I'm the seed sower, the funky weed grower, the mad rap flower. I'm a man's man, now do y'all understand? What I'm giving ain't cocked in the palm of my hand. So take the nasty plunge, glad not grunge, and I know it's really hard when you love someone. You always survive me like Spanky did slimy. If anybody messes, I'ma bust him in the eye and check that ass like Phil Esposito, the Guido. UPS next day back to the smoke 'em, smoke 'em, smoke 'em. If you got 'em, if you ain't got 'em, then you hit rock bottom. Smoke 'em, smoke 'em, smoke 'em. If you got 'em, if you ain't got 'em, then you hit rock bottom. Yeah, smoke 'em, smoke 'em, smoke 'em. If you got 'em, if you ain't got 'em, then you hit rock bottom. Smoke 'em if you got 'em, smoke 'em if you got 'em, if you ain't got 'em. Well, I said me and my Les Paul is out dropping science. A pocket full of bozos and a full carry license. Never walking streets, looking past my shoulder, acting kinda bolder since my dog got older. I walk the walk and I ace the test. And when I put the pressure on, all your tendencies manifest. Half spake peckerwood talking to the dead. I break into your house and I smell your bed.
there you go. There you go. That's for you. That's for you. God love you. God bless.
That was Spearhead with the Joker from the High Times Magazine Normal Foundation benefit album Hempilation. This has been Normal's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Thanks to Podshow.com for all the great pod-safe music. We feature the band Carne Cruda as our theme. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAUDIOSTASH.com for more information about every day's show. Thanks to Red Aphid Interactive Media for the podcasting technology. We're back at 4:20 tomorrow. If you listen to the Audio Stash, cast your vote at Podcast Alley or other podcast directory services. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow. The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redaphid.com.